Open on Dedication Day, September the 30th, 1935, Roosevelt at the rim, 726 feet of concrete curving between canyon walls, 3.25 million cubic yards, enough to pave a highway from San Francisco to New York, 17 turbines powering 1.3 million people. Beautiful, but behind this monument, 96 official deaths, 42 more recorded as pneumonia, and historians who count up to 187. Tunnels reaching 140 degrees Fahrenheit. A workers' strike crushed in 8 days. A corporation that hired a prostitute to destroy a dying man's lawsuit, and a superintendent who walked away with a $350,000 bonus. Who actually paid for Hoover Dam, not in dollars, in lives. Before the dam, the Colorado River was a force few could control. In 1905, a single engineering mishap sent the river bursting through a canal near Yuma, carving a new inland sea overnight, the Salton Sea. Water swallowed farms, rail lines, homes, and entire towns. The message was clear. The river would not wait for permission. For decades, floods ravaged the Imperial and Palo Verde valleys, drowning crops and homes, threatening the fragile settlements of the Southwest. By the 1920s, the pressure to act was overwhelming. 7 states fought over water rights, each fearing the river would be claimed by someone else. Congress argued for years, debating costs, risks, and who would benefit. The stakes were not just property or profit, but survival in a region where drought and flood could both destroy. Into this chaos stepped the Boulder Canyon Project Act of 1928. With a stroke of a pen, Congress authorized $165 million for a dam, a canal, and a promise the river would be tamed, its power and water divided by a law. The cost of that promise was paid early. During the first government surveys in 1921, 2 men, Harold Connolly and J.G. Tierney, drowned in the Colorado's unpredictable currents. Tierney's body was never found. His name would become the first on a long list of the dam's casualties. The act had passed, the money was set, but the river's warning was already written in the lives it claimed. Now, a new wave of men would be drawn to Black Canyon, chasing work and hope, unaware of the dangers waiting beneath the surface. The promise of work drew men from every corner of the country. By the spring of 1931, more than 21,000 desperate job seekers flooded into the Nevada desert, chasing rumors of steady pay and a fresh start. The national unemployment rate had soared above 25%. For many, the only thing waiting was a patch of sand in a makeshift camp called Ragtown. Rows of canvas tents, battered cars, and shacks hammered together from packing crates. Daytime temperatures reached 119 degrees Fahrenheit. Water was scarce, sanitation almost non-existent. Babies slept in the shade of scrub brush while their fathers lined up at dawn outside the company gates, hoping for a place on the payroll. Overseeing this human tide was 6 companies. Inc., a joint venture of Utah Construction Company, Pacific Bridge Company, J.F. Shea Company, McDonald & Kahn, Morrison Knudsen Company, and Bechtel Kaiser Company. Their winning bid was $48,890,995, undercutting the government's estimate by less than $24,000. The contract spelled out the terms with brutal clarity. For every day behind schedule, 6 companies would pay a $3,000 penalty. But if they finished early, a $350,000 bonus awaited Superintendent Frank Crow, a fortune in the depths of the Depression. Speed was everything. The faster the work, the higher the profit. Men were hired by the hundreds, then pushed to the limit. The camps swelled, but the wages, 50 cents to $1 an hour, meant survival for families who had nothing left. Every man who signed on knew the risks, but for most the alternative was hunger. In the shadow of Black Canyon, the rules of the game were set: finish first or pay the price. For the workers, that price would be measured not just in sweat, but in blood. Inside the tunnels, the air shimmered with heat and something deadlier: carbon monoxide. Gasoline trucks and compressors choked the 56-foot wide shafts, where temperatures soared past 140 degrees. Workers staggered through the gloom, dizzy and gasping, their lungs burning. Official records would later say pneumonia killed 42 men. Their families remembered the stories. men collapsing without fever, lips blue, breath shallow, never waking up. No one in Boulder City, just a few miles away, ever caught this supposed outbreak. Only those in the tunnels died. Ed Krause, a high scaler, carried the scars into court. In 1933, he described nights when the exhaust was so thick the tunnel lights flickered and men lost consciousness at their drills. He told the jury how he lost his strength, his health. He could no longer father children. But 6 companies had answers ready. Their lawyers argued they had met every federal ventilation standard. When Krause took the stand, a rumour spread that the company had hired a prostitute to undermine his testimony. The trial veered into spectacle. The jury deadlocked. Behind the legal drama, a loophole sealed the workers' fate. Federal lawyers insisted Nevada's mining safety laws did not apply to a United States government contract. The court agreed after the tunnels were finished. The death stayed on the books as pneumonia, not poison. No one was held accountable. Legal avenues closed, and the message was clear. Speed and profit came first. For the men in the tunnels, there was nowhere left to turn. On the morning of August 7th, 1931, the clatter of drills and dynamite fell silent. More than 1,400 men dropped their tools and walked off the Hoover Dam site, a river of angry bodies flowing out of the tunnels and across the Nevada dust. Their demands were simple: $5 a day, ice water, flush toilets, 8-hour shifts that counted the brutal trek to the job, and a safety man at every tunnel mouth. They wanted the company to obey Nevada mining laws, to admit that the heat and fumes inside the mountain were killing men. Leaflets smuggled past foremen listed the dead and the missing. For a week, the camp buzzed with hope, but 6 companies had the law on its side. Federal marshals threatened to call in troops. A court injunction ordered the men back. Union organizers were jailed or driven out. Hundreds lost their jobs. The strike collapsed. The only real concessions were a few more lights, cold water barrels, and a promise never quite kept of better ventilation. Yet even as collective resistance failed, individual ingenuity found a foothold. High scalers, the daredevils who dangled from ropes to chip loose rock off the canyon walls, faced a daily hail of falling debris. Early in the job, a single rock to the head could mean a fatal plunge. The men took matters into their own hands. They dipped cloth caps in tar, stiffening them into crude helmets. Some used layers of canvas, others borrowed steel shells from shipyards. By 1932, a riveter named James Hardhat Perry patented a steel helmet padded inside. Within months, the company issued hundreds of these new hard hats to high scalers and tunnel crews. Head injuries dropped nearly in half. The strike was over, but the will to survive, by any means necessary, endured. On this project, victories were measured in small inventions, not sweeping change. The dam would rise, but only because men found ways to protect themselves when no one else would. Concrete alone would have crushed itself under its own heat. On June 6, 1933, engineers began pouring the first of more than 200 interlocking columns, each just 5 feet high. This modular approach let them control the curing process, avoiding cracks that could have doomed the entire structure. But even that was not enough. To draw out the deadly heat, workers snaked nearly 590 miles of steel pipes through the forms, pumping in ice-cold water from massive refrigeration plants built on site. As each column cooled, the next layer could be poured, sometimes within days. The process ran day and night, a race against both physics and the clock. Every pour was logged, every temperature tracked, as if the dam itself was a patient in intensive care. In the end, this lattice of columns and pipes turned a mountain of wet concrete into a single, solid wall that would hold back the Colorado for generations. On December 20th, 1935, a young electrician's helper named Patrick Tierney fell from the Arizona intake tower, plunging more than 300 feet into the cold, dark water below. The date matched exactly 14 years to the day after his father, J.G. Tierney, drowned during the first government survey of this canyon. Patrick's name was the last officially recorded death tied to the dam's construction. His story, found in hospital ledgers and death certificates, closed the ledger of lives lost. For the Tierney family, the dam's concrete wall became a tombstone. For the project, Patrick's fall was a final silent entry, one more worker erased beneath the celebration of completion. The dam would stand as a monument to bold ambition, but its foundation was set in a ledger of names, beginning and ending with a father and his son. Hoover Dam still towers above Black Canyon, but its shadow runs deeper than concrete or water. As Lake Mead sinks and debates over infrastructure resurface, one question remains. Who actually paid for Hoover Dam? Not in dollars, in lives. Some debts history still refuses to settle.